Alright, as promised, here's my 2012 Caprice PPV. I don't know how long I've had this car. I've had it a few years actually. It was actually my customer's initially. I had another 2012 Caprice that was a Maryland State Trooper car that I drove to Washington, North Carolina to get. It was 500 miles one way. I got it, and then I did a Stage 2 Summit turbo cam. I built my own log that held a 78, 75 in this area right here. I sold a couple of logs. Most people just, I guess, got them and didn't know how to use it or whatever. And anyway, they resold it for more than they bought it from me for, and typically how it goes. But so I guess he liked the Maryland car, and he wanted one, so I found this one for him. It actually came from Bobby Admire or something. It's one of Tracy, the god of Caprice PPV. It was the guy that is in the shop with him up there in South Carolina or wherever it is. So he'd got the car, he had tuned it, turned off DOD, and done a couple things to it. It was a Tennessee cop car. And so I went and got it for my customer and then brought it back, and he immediately wanted to do cam and converter and all that stuff on it. So I proceeded to do that. I pulled the engine out. I pulled the engine out because I did converter, and then I did the cam, and then made a major malfunction that was my fault, and destroyed the engine. It tore up number one of the cylinders over here. What is it? 2, 4, number 6. So it tore up number 6. The piston was gone. Tore up the sleeves. Tore up the cylinder head. Just pretty much destroyed my day and his. He eventually said he wanted to go turbo anyway. So, and trying to, make everybody happy. He ended up with the Maryland car, and then I got this car with a blown up engine. So I had a 6.2 that was had rod and pistons in it, Steve Morris rods and pistons, and it had the heads, 823 heads, but I had 820, the only difference between 821 and 823 heads is the valves. The intake valves are hollow stem on the LS3, so it has hollow stem valves in it. It has trunnion upgrade. It has BTR 660 springs. It has a Broski custom ground cam in it, and of course, hardened push rods and all that stuff. So, but the big thing is you can't really see from up here, is that down there is twin turbos, and they're low mount, because when I built the Maryland Trooper car, these cars suck for space. I mean, I like it and was attracted to these cars because they were V8 rear wheel drive and had a 6-speed. But beyond that, I hate these cars. I absolutely hate these cars. Working on them, finding parts, dealing with other members of the community, it's just like one of those niche cars that, there's just certain criteria for people that own cars like this, and I don't fit any of them because I'm not that. But I've had Marauders, and it was the same way. There's always one guy in the group that's the go-to tuner guru, and he's got the best tune, and Moe's Speed Shop. And I mean, I talked to them and dealt with them on the phone, and I was not impressed. I don't like them. With this car community, there's one main tuner. There are a couple other tuners, and not that they're not good, but that's just, and then there's always one or two guys that every time they think about something, they got to post in the group, or they see another one on the road or whatever. Oh, Michigan still has one in service. Here's a picture of one. Who cares, But anyway, enough of that. I've tried to sell this car for a while. Nobody wants it. I can't give it away. I don't understand why. I know it's a 12. It's not the more coveted 14 and up that has the SS interior. The stuff in these interfaces or interchanges with the Pontiac G8. So this one does have the G8 door handles. It does have the console. It's got the G8 console. The tap shift works. It's got the G8 steering wheel. It's got the G8 A pillars and B pillars and all that stuff. And I don't know if I said door handles, which they really did make a difference because they're faded black plastic from the factory. But they are cop cars. They were cop cars. They're only available to law enforcement. So they have a lot of idle hours on them and whatnot. So I mean, when the cars are together and running and driving, I do like them. It is a good running, driving car, but as far as working on them and stuff, it might look like there's a lot of room, but there really is not a lot of room. I mean, I got a new AC compressor I'm about to put on. I mean, you see how in there that thing is. It's just not pleasant to work on. So I'm trying to get this thing ready to go to the dyno because obviously you can't sell anything without the big numbers and everything. So this car is currently integrated with a Holley Dominator. The Holley is running a few things that I'm gonna clean up and fix. I'm gonna use it as boost controller. These are just here from when I started on it a while back, and this car always gets pushed to the back because once I start working on them, I hate them. And so the Holley's running the ignition and the injectors. They're 210 pound-per-hour injectors, and if you know anything about the E38 ECU, they have a 127 pound-per-hour limit. And then you have to do some trickery to get around it and double the Stoich and all this stuff, and then you can run them. I've talked to Michael. He said that he can make them work. So I'm gonna put the car back on the stock ECU, and then I'm gonna again keep the Holley in there and let it run what I'm running with it. I'm running the scavenge pump with it. I'm running the secondary pump. It's got a 4303 in line, so the fuel line comes up to my regulator here, and then the regulator comes over. There's a check valve, and then it runs over through a post filter and into the rails, and then I think it's deadhead because these don't have a return. So it runs off the stock pump and the stock tank. All that is untouched. It runs off the stock pump, cruising and driving, and then about 3 pounds of boost, I think it is. I have the 4303 turn on, and then it supplies the added fuel flow and pressure. It's tapped into the bottom of the tank. I've made a couple videos on this car before. If anybody cares, you can go watch that. But basically, I've messed with a lot of the stuff on these cars over the years. The fuel system, these cars have a saddle tank, so you have to have the Venturi and the return to be able to keep the saddle tank, so it'll keep the same level. And they're just the basket in these is not very tall, so you don't have a whole lot of room. I've modified them where I could run a 525 or 450. Those are the same physical size pump, but I have modified those before and run those, and I didn't have a way to test it to know how far I could push it or run it or whatever, but I don't know or care what other people are doing. The only fuel system that I really liked was that auxiliary one that it taps into the bottom of the tank, and then you got a pump on the inline, and then it feeds like, you know, I just explained here. So, you know, again, it only comes on in power and isn't running all the time. And another thing I don't like is their IRS. I have modified this thing to run a 15 by 10 on the back, so you got to run the V6 brakes and rotors and all that stuff, and then you got to cut the lower control arm and box it and weld it back in to fit it because of the width, and then it's very tight. Trying to balance the tires is a nightmare in itself. You know, and the other thing I don't like RS, period. Maybe as a driver, but obviously I'm more of a drag car guy. You gotta be careful with that these days. But so you gotta be careful with the RS. You know, there's so many moving components. There's just so much stuff there to break and tear up, and it's a weak point in my opinion. So that's why I don't like RS. That Tracy guy, he didn't. He had somebody fab a whole structure, and it's solid axle, and of course his is a gutted out race car anyway. It's I don't know, low 3,000 pounds, but anyway. So I'm gonna put it back to control on the E38, tune the injectors, tune the E85. I'm gonna put it on the E85. These turbos are supposed to make supposed to support 1100 horsepower, and that is on an LS3. I'm assuming that's flywheel power, because, you know, that's better to market because that's going to be a higher number. So this car, it does spool instantly. It is a very quick car. I will give it that. It is very quick. I think it's on about 13 pounds or something. I really don't remember. I don't know. I'm going to set up the boost control and everything because I want to basically pin the gate shut and see what it makes. I mean, my other Turbo 6.0 stuff and the big trucks, I mean, they're going through 14 bolts and 80 E's and everything. And on 12 pounds, they usually make 675. So on pump 93. So with this, you know, since it is flex fuel and everything, has the flex sensor in the back and all, I will be putting E85 in this one, basically just for tuning and dyno purposes. And then, you know, when it doesn't sell, then I'll just keep some E85 around and splash it in there when I want to, and then have everything set up so, you know, it can have max power with the E85 and just see how it does. But you know, I really don't care about chasing numbers. If you watched any of my other stuff, I really don't care. The only reason I do it is to get them tuned properly and to get them running well, and the numbers really don't mean that much to me. But when you're trying to sell something like this, that's everybody wants to know, how much power does it make? What time does it run? What 60 foot does it do? And then, you know, it's a fun street car. That's what I built it to be. It is, you know, when you don't have to work on it or deal with any of the Aussie stuff. And, you know, it is a good running driving car, but again, just the fitment and room. That's why I went with the low mounts on it. And, you know, they seem to work well. I mean, it is kind of unnerving going down the road, you know, and you're just constantly concerned that you're going to hit something and rip the turbo off, you know. But I mean, they are pretty high up in there, and I don't have the car. I don't think it's lowered. My Maryland car, I had SS springs, but I think it lowers it about almost 3/4 of an inch or something. It's not much. But anyway, so that's the update on this thing. I'm gonna do the AC on it, and then get everything, try to clean up the engine bay some. That was what, you know, somebody told me that, you know, it looks like I just threw it together, and, you know, I I don't see it. I mean, I know there's some wiring here that's visible, you know, power wires and keyed wires going to the Holly, and I know the fuel filter is kind of an eyesore potentially, but beyond that, I don't really see what's thrown together about it, you know. The wiring, I mean, you do have wiring there for 3 sets of injectors, because at one time I had that Holly set up to run 16 injectors on another intake, and another setup I had run, and I tried it on this car initially, but decided against it. So I am going to clean up the wiring and, you know, loom this so it doesn't look thrown together. And, you know, just like I say, if I can get Michael to, well, I mean, I know he will get it dialed in and tuned in, and then, like I was saying on my other video, I think it gets like 200 miles to a tank, which is just like, pisses me off. So hopefully he can get the mileage cleaned up and everything. And again, that goes back to it's running, the fueling is done by the Holly, and the Holly is run off of a wideband, and the wideband is typically 10.0 air fuel, even though it says it's 14.7 or 15. So that's just the inefficiencies of tuning off of a wideband at cruise. So we'll be using the narrow bands on it, and then we'll do the lean cruise and, you know, all that, and try to get, I mean, I really would like to get 15. I don't see why this car shouldn't get 15 miles to the gallon, you know, driving and cruising. Obviously, you know, when you stand on it and you got 8 210 pound per hour injectors, I don't expect to get anything for fuel mileage, but, you know, cruising, it should do decent. And the Denali, that I just changed the fluid and filter in it on the transmission and put new shocks on the back and everything for it with the 5.3, and it runs and drives great. I'm happy with it. But I mean, with the 6.2 in it, I mean, I don't know how much that truck weighs, but, you know, I was getting 15 or 16 miles a gallon with that, you know. And then this thing, my Maryland car with the turbo setup was 42 or 4,300 pounds with me in it. So, you know, this car should be around the same weight. So this ought to be a lot lighter than an all-wheel drive Denali. And it has these cars have a 292 rear end, and I don't know, I have no idea what the Denali has in it, but, you know, this thing ought to get excellent fuel mileage. So, but anyway, that's it for now. I'll get all this done, get in touch with Michael, see when he's good to bring it down there, and then hopefully the next video of this thing will be on the dyno, and, you know, with the big numbers, hopefully, you know, that everybody wants to see. And maybe somebody be interested in buying it, or, you know, again, if it gets decent fuel mileage, I don't mind driving it. And I know I have the AC fixed on it. So anyway, that's it for now.